Locals warned him, "Don't cross the timberline." He didn't listen. Now, decades later, we found his voice on tape right before it whispers, "It's behind you." Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment on what you think of the video. The thing in the Timberline eye arrival. The gravel road had been narrowing for hours until it was nothing more than two parallel scars in the earth. Rowan kept his hands tight on the wheel, feeling every jolt as the tires navigated the ruts. He was chasing a story. At least, that's what he told himself. The old rumor had been floating in internet forums for years. A stretch of forest in the northern timberline where the trees grew too close together, where sound didn't carry right, and where people had gone missing without leaving even a footprint. Locals whispered about a black seam in the woods, a shadowed gash in reality that didn't belong to the forest or the earth. He'd read every thread, every third-hand account. They always ended the same way. Don't go looking for it. The cabin he'd rented for the week was little more than a box of wood with a rusted stove. It sat on the edge of the tree line, the pines so close he could almost touch them from the porch. They loomed like watching figures. Rowan unloaded his gear, camera, audio recorder, camping pack, and tried not to notice how quickly the light died here. By 5 p.m., it felt like midnight. 2. The locals' warnings. The nearest town was 20 miles south, a scattering of houses and one grocery that doubled as a post office. Rowan asked the cashier, a woman in her 60s, if she'd heard of the black seam. Her eyes didn't meet his. "People around here don't go up past the timberline," she said, sliding his change across the counter without touching his hand. When he pressed, she shook her head. "It's not the seam you need to worry about. It's what comes out of it, stays in the tree line, watches." Rowan laughed like it was a joke, but she didn't join in. The first night, he decided to scout the area before dark. The forest felt wrong the moment he stepped in, like the air was thicker, muffling sound. His boots crunched dead needles, but the noise seemed to get swallowed before it reached his ears. By the time the sun was gone, he'd found nothing unusual, but the silence pressed heavier. At the edge of his flashlight beam, he thought he saw movement, branches swaying where there was no wind. Back at the cabin, Rowan set up his audio recorder by the window, hoping to catch nighttime sounds. Instead, the playback was almost silent. No crickets, no rustle of animals. But just before the recording ended, there was a whisper, so faint it might have been his own breath, saying, "Rowan," into the woods. The next morning, he went deeper. The forest grew denser, the trees leaning together as if conspiring. Around noon, he found it. A fissure between two blackened pines, no wider than a doorway. The bark was scorched, but there were no signs of fire. Beyond the gap, the woods looked different. The light was wrong, dimmer even under a cloudless sky. He stepped through. The air was colder here, and the ground was soft, as if it had been freshly turned. He noticed an absence that made his stomach tighten. No insects, no birds. Just his own breathing and a faint hum that he couldn't tell was in the air or inside his head. After maybe 20 minutes, he turned back toward the gap, but it was gone. The trees behind him were just trees, endless in every direction. V. The Watcher. The hum grew louder. Rowan spun, certain he saw movement. Something tall slipping between the trunks. Too tall for a man, too thin. He started walking fast. The light seemed to fade more with each step, shadows stretching unnaturally. At one point, he swore a branch brushed his shoulder, but when he turned, nothing was there. Then he saw it clearly, 30 feet ahead, half hidden behind a tree. It was pale, almost white, and its limbs were too long. Its head tilted in a way no neck should. He caught the glint of eyes, reflective like an animal's, but set deep in a hollow face. It didn't move, but he had the terrible sense that it was smiling without lips. He ran, 6, the hollow ground. The forest seemed to rearrange itself as he moved. The trees leaned closer, the path behind him vanishing. His lungs burned, but the hum never stopped. It drilled into his skull, vibrating in his teeth. At last, he stumbled into a clearing. The soil here was black and wet, and the ground was littered with things. Old camping gear, shredded clothing, rusted knives. No bones, though. That's when he realized there were bones. The trees. The pale trunks weren't wood, they were spines. 7. The voice. Something moved in the clearing. Rowan froze. It wasn't the tall thing from before. This was worse. This was several of them standing just beyond the ring of pale trunks, their shapes bending in ways that made his stomach turn. One stepped forward. The hum stopped, replaced by a sound like wind through a hollow pipe. Words formed. "We knew you'd come." Rowan stumbled backward, tripping on something half buried in the soil. His hand closed around it. His own audio recorder, but it was cracked and rusted, as if it had been lying here for years. Fate, the realization. He bolted into the trees, not caring where he went. The forest blurred into streaks of black and gray until, suddenly, he broke through into daylight. The cabin stood ahead, looking the same, almost. The wood was warped, the windows clouded. Inside, dust lay thick over everything. The air was stale. He found a calendar on the wall, yellowed with age. The year was wrong, decades too far ahead. Something moved behind him. He didn't turn. The final recording. The last anyone heard of Rowan was the audio file uploaded to his blog weeks later. It was 12 minutes of silence, then a faint hum, and finally a voice whispering, clear and close. "It's behind you." The file ended with the sound of a door creaking open and the soft, wet noise of something stepping inside. The comments filled with speculation, theories, and hoaxes, but the locals who listened didn't comment at all. They just nodded, closed their laptops, and made sure their curtains were drawn before dark.